Everybody, Chris and Lumen here, and you're probably wondering what the hell. Yeah, you're gonna get a break from my ugly mug for once, and you can just look at her. And here's why. So, doing some pretty significant work sometimes can have some debilitating results. There's two ways this can generally happen. Sometimes, basically, my lower back is just completely blown out and it's completely energetic. I didn't do anything to it. But when this stuff does happen, it's always exactly the same. And it you can like barely stand up and move. Like it sucks something bad. And until I repair my energy field, it's just sitting in that chair and doing a video like, yeah, that ain't happening. But I wanted to get something done. So heck, you just really need to hear me, right? Um, Not every time you have something like this happens, it doesn't mean like it's any kind of attack or anything like that. I actually checked, but I think it had more to do with what she started revealing yesterday, which is what you could call the master metaphor. Like if you were going to ask, if you were going to pray for one thing so that you could start to see and understand and make the connections, like this is the one thing. And it's connected to a lot of the things that we talk all the time about, like the Benedict exorcism and the saying, to see the light of wisdom, you must first empty your cup. It's used many times in the Bible and the Nag Hammadi. And I just had something else come to me tonight as far as like once you have the understanding, something for like an energetic uh, support effect using a stone that I don't normally freaking use, but it just popped into my head. It's like that's one of the biggest things it's known for. But now I understand it. Very, very interesting stuff. So that's what we're going to cover tonight. Like, what is this master metaphor that is at the heart of trying to complete the Gnostic path, trying to get your ass out of this shit show simulation of life where you just keep going over and over and over the same stuff over again because there's this one master thing that's holding you back. Like that's what we're going to talk about. So if you want to know more, don't go away.
Wake me up inside. Can't wake up. Wake me up inside. Save me. Call my name and save me from the dark. Wake me up in my blood to run. Can't wait before I come undone. Save me from the nothing love become.
So a little bit more about, what I was just saying. Most, if not all, of your serious blockages, programming stuff, uh, just about anything that's in your system, like when you purge something big enough or you break a big enough block or seal or barrier or something like that, a lot of times it can feel like your lower back goes out and it's completely energetic. Like when you look at the energy field, you can see it's just like a big tattered hole there. It's got to be repaired because it's all connected to the root chakra. Root chakra is like the center of everything when it comes to all these stored programs. But you got to, a lot of people would think of it like a root of a tree, but it'd be better to think of it like a root directory in a computer system. Now, I wasn't sure based on what was happening yesterday. It started to lock up. And then I made that new pendant that's basically just freaking the God's fist pendant. It's this brimstone. And when I was making that brimstone pendant, like it completely went away. I'm like, oh, great, that was easy. And then it came back this morning. And sometimes you'll see like little manifestation indicators in your outer world that something happened, which made me curious about whether it was something or not, because I've got this screened in porch. And when I feed my cat wet food, I generally just put it on a styrofoam plate, put it outside. Then I throw it in a trash can that sits out there until it's time to take out the trash. But I opened the door this morning to let the cat out, and it was just totally torn apart. Like a raccoon got into it. But it had that initial, when I saw it, it was just like an indicator of just like something blew everything out. But when I put my little energetic sleuths on it, like everybody described the same thing. Like there was something that was blown out, but there wasn't any like trace evidence of like any kind of attack. Sometimes it can be hard to tell the difference, because if there was, it would have a sense to it. But I think it had more to do with what she showed me. Like I've said before, context is king. Like understanding the context of these spiritual metaphors is absolutely critical to completing the game and figuring it out. Because when you can take these clues in the right context, you can give the right instructions, or you can pray for a certain thing the right way, and it has a bigger effect. And that's what we're dealing with here. So think about these sayings that we talk about all the time. Like take the Benedict exorcism, for instance, in the last part of it. Get back, Satan. Do not tempt me with your vanities. The cup you offer is evil. Drink the poison yourself. So it's talking about the cup, and it's talking about drinking, and it's talking about a poison. And then the other biggest one, to see the light of wisdom, you must first empty your cup. There's a lot of ways to interpret that, but this one actually is bigger. Like this is why these spiritual processes happen when you're on the hero's journey or some variant of it, why you become isolated, why you become cut off from the world. Like there's a reason for it. There's a purpose for it. It's not you being punished. It is the world is the thing that you are drunk on. The world is the illusion. The world is the addiction. And the key word that she gave me, which opened up even more clues, this is the thing that you want to ask for above all else. This is the thing that you would pray for. This is the key. You want to pray for, let's just call it spiritual sobriety. You want to be sober. As you peel back the layers of separating from the world, the people that are completely drunk on the world have no spiritual awareness whatsoever. None. They think you're all crazy. And they're also wrapped up in all the addictions that the world offers: sugar addiction, drugs, cigarettes, porn, coffee, TV. Like it's just a nonstop following your addictions. And that's why it's so, food, it's so hard to quit, because it's a drug. Life is a drug that you're addicted to, but it's like you're addicted to a bad dream. You're addicted to a corrupted world while simultaneously craving to be in the perfected world. That's where you want to be, but your body and your mind is like, no, I want all these drugs. And when the dream drug world gets worse, what you typically do is seek out more drugs to numb the pain or distract you. You become drunk. And the more drunk you are, the further away from the light you are. Sobriety, sober. That, in and of itself, as a spiritual metaphor, is the key. Now, let me give you a couple examples here from like the Nag Hammadi that's specifically talking about this, and maybe it'll make a little bit more sense. Okay, here's the big one. This is the one that first popped into my head when this was coming to me. From the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus said, I took my stand in the midst of the world, and in flesh I appeared to them. I found them all drunk, and I did not find any of them thirsty. My soul ached for the children of humanity, because they are blind in their hearts and do not see, for they came into the world empty, and they also seek to depart from the world empty. But now they are drunk. When they shake off their wine, then they will repent. Then we go to the gospel of truth. So whoever has knowledge is from above. If called, that person hears, replies, turns to the one who is calling and goes up to him. He knows how he is called. That person has knowledge and does the will of him who called. That person wishes to please him, finds rest, and has the appropriate name. Those who have knowledge in this way know where they came from and where they are going. They know as one who, having become intoxicated, has turned from his drunkenness, and having come to his senses, has gotten control of himself, turning away from the world, waking up from the dream. From the secret book of John, there is one we talk about quite often, and that is when Adam meets enlightened insight, which you all know and love. Adam saw the woman beside him. At once, enlightened insight appeared and removed the veil that covered his mind. He sobered up from the drunkenness of darkness. He recognized his counterpart and said, This is now bone from my bones and flesh from my flesh. Moving on to the secret book of James, the Savior said, You have been favored through the Father to receive my sayings. The other disciples have written my sayings in their books as if they have understood, but be careful. They have done their work without really understanding. They have listened like foolish people, and they have not understood. Do you not want to be filled? Your hearts are drunk. Do you not want to be sober? Toward the end, well, it is the end of Thunder Perfect Mind, which is the highest aspect of the divine feminine. It's like she is, whoever wrote the book was basically channeling her. This is toward the end of it. Look at the words of this one and all the text that have been written. Pay attention, you listeners, and you also, you angels, and you who have been sent, and you spirits who have risen from the dead. I alone exist, and I have no one to judge me. For there are many sorts of seductive sins and deeds without restraint, and disgraceful desires and fleeting pleasures that people embrace until they become sober and rise up to their place of rest. They will find me there, and they will live and not die again. So here she's saying there are many sorts of seductive sins and deeds without restraint, and disgraceful desires and fleeting pleasures that people embrace, and that is the drunkenness, until they become sober. This is from the teachings of Sylvanus. O obstinate soul, be sober and shake off your drunkenness, which is the work of ignorance. If you are obstinate and live in the body, you dwell in a boorish condition. When you entered into a bodily birth, you were begotten. When you were born again, you came to be inside the bridal chamber, and you were illuminated in mind. And then Let's see, this is the book of Thomas, not the Gospel of Thomas, but the book of Thomas. And I think we actually named, we talked about this one recently. The Savior continued and said, "O unsearchable love of light, O bitterness of the fire. You blaze in the bodies of people and in the marrow of their bones, blazing them night and day, burning their limbs and making their minds drunk and their souls deranged. You dominate males and females day and night. You move and arouse them secretly and visibly. When the males are aroused, they are attracted to the females, and the females to the males. That is why it is said that everyone who seeks truth from true wisdom will fashion wings to fly, fleeing from the passion that burns human spirits. Woe to you, prisoners, for you are bound in caves." Sounds like Plato's allegory of the cave. "You laugh, you rejoice in mad laughter. You do not perceive your destruction, neither do you perceive your plight, nor have you understood that you dwell in darkness and death. Rather, you are drunk with fire and full of bitterness. Your hearts are deranged because of the smoldering within you, and the poison and blows of your enemies are a delight to you. Darkness has risen in you like the lights. You have surrendered your freedom to slavery. You have darkened your hearts and surrendered your minds to foolishness. You have filled your minds with the smoke of the fire within you, and your light has been hidden in the dark cloud. You love the garment you wear, although it is filthy, and you have been gripped by non-existent hope. You have believed in what you do not know. You all live in bondage, but pride yourselves in your freedom. You have baptized your souls in the water of darkness. You have pursued your own wishes." All of this is using the metaphor of drunkenness, which is basically clueless. Just believing what's in front of you, just believing the nonsense of the world, and just following the whims of addiction. So in this case, it's not just a matter of, it really is not just simply a matter of, are you sober or not? It's like you are a worldaholic. And that is where it's going to start to show here in some other examples, like what is the correlation with that? Being in the world, having a mind of the world, while you're simultaneously seeking the light, seeking wisdom, trying to connect with it, but struggling with it. And there's a lot of correlations here I'm going to go over. So now that she has made a direct correlation to drunkenness and being lost in the world, it's this worldly mind, this worldly system that is preventing you from seeing what you're not, what you want to see, trying to do two things at once. And it's not just about being sober, not sober. It's the fact that, like, look at it this way. When you, in my notes here, I've got life is a highly addictive drug. And when you look at it that way, you start to see that you almost have to begin looking at your spiritual progression as if you are a recovering alcoholic or any other type of drug. You're in one of those anonymous programs because you're always in it. So you have to manage it. And as you make further and further progress, it gets easier and easier. But people are not looking at the problem as it is. And a lot of it comes from, stems from things like religion, which religion, chopped everything up to make it useful in controlling people. And it always starts with, the world's good because God created it. Well, point of fact, no, it's not. How do I know? I have eyeballs. So look around. So what are some of the indicators? Like, let's just break this down and compare it. Just addiction in general. What are some of the factors? So the first one would be craving. an intense desire or urge to use the substance or engage in the behavior. Okay, that's pretty much an issue for everybody starting out. And it gets less and less over time. But when you're in that adversary parasitic mind starting out, like it is driving everything. It's driving all your impulses. Like you think you're making choices, but all you're really doing is following impulses and cravings and desires. You think you're making a choice to go to Starbucks and get a coffee, but you crave that coffee. The craving came first and you followed the instruction. You went and did it. Number two, loss of control, inability to regulate use despite intentions to stop or reduce consumption. Number three, compulsion, feeling driven to use even when aware of negative consequences. Number four, denial, refusing to acknowledge the severity of the addiction or its impact. Number five, obsessive thinking, constant preoccupation with obtaining, using, or recovering from use. Number six, emotional dependence, relying on the substance or behavior for mood regulation. Number seven, cognitive distortions, justifying or rationalizing use with faulty logic. Number eight, memory triggers, environmental or emotional cues that spark cravings and relapse. Number nine, tolerance to consequences, diminished concern for personal, social, or legal repercussions. Number 10, identity shifts, a sense of self increasingly shaped around the addiction, leading to isolation or loss of purpose. Now, when you're doing all this spiritual awakening stuff and you're trying to, I mean, you're going to have things that you know you shouldn't be doing, or you controls you, but people, they just can't resist it, and they just keep doing the same things. So there's a lot of things that I see people do, such as denial, refusing to acknowledge the severity, and what was the other one? Cognitive distortions, justifying or rationalizing use with faulty logic. That's the fun thing about this world, is there's always something out there that will tell you what you want to hear. So people will just keep looking for the thing that gives them permission to do what they already want to do. Some sort of, false spirituality. Now, using that same idea, being drunk on the world, I asked, how do addicts avoid facing the addiction? Now we're talking, when I use this query to come up with these results, it's really no different from what we're talking about. You're drunk on the world. You are, you're in this place that is excessively complex, very challenging, and it's just easier to believe that it's not there. And it's no different than being addicted to anything else. So how they avoid facing it? Denial, refusing to acknowledge that this thing is problematic. Number two, minimization, downplaying the severity or the impact of the addiction. Number three, blaming others. That's an easy one with this game. Shifting responsibility to external factors or people. The devil made me do it. The archons made me do it. God put me here. God created this place, whatever. Number four, rationalizations, justifying use with excuses like stress or societal pressure. And that one's easy to use because the further you go, it just keeps amping up. It makes you stronger, but it also makes it more challenging. And then to escape the challenge, to escape how uncomfortable it can be sometimes doing the work, like energetically blowing your back out, we can just, say, oh, well, it is, I got to deal with this thing, so I'm going to use this as an excuse to treat myself, to make things better. Number five, comparison, claiming that they aren't as bad as others with addictions. Number 6, avoidance, steering clear of conversations, people, or situations that highlight the problem. Yeah, that's why do you think I have a very limited uh amount of viewers? Because this isn't like tell you what you want to hear channel. It's like a straight from wisdom channel. Like, you really want this? Okay, we're going to talk about some true stuff. But that ain't what most people want to hear. They want to hear, like, what's the way I can have, like, magic-y experiences and still do what I want to do and have fun? Just not realizing that the world is what the world is, and this is something that you have to overcome. It's a temporary experience. Distractions, huge one with this stuff. Engaging in work, hobbies, or other behaviors that shift focus away from the addiction. Secrecy, hiding use, lying about habits, isolating themselves. Defiance, rejecting help or insisting that they can quit on their own. Escapism, using substances or behaviors to suppress emotions and reality. But in this case, the world is the drug. The world is the drug because they can't see deep enough at the spiritual level to truly perceive where they are and what they're doing here, and why you keep going around in these loops of suffering, chasing the dragon, chasing something that's going to make you feel better, just looking for a way to rationalize it. When you're on the real path, it's hard. It's going to get hard, and then it'll get easier a little bit. And it's going to get hard, and it'll get easier a little bit. But it's for a reason. She's got to challenge you. She has to push you. But a lot of times it's your own work, your own desire to know the truth, your own desire to free yourself, having an awake enough soul to realize there's a problem with where you are, and you really just want to get back home. You're done with this. I think everybody could agree. If I said, give me a show of hands, everybody would like to live in heaven on earth. The Ten of Cups card in the tarot. Everything's perfect. You're living with your lumen partner. You don't have to work. Everything's beautiful. Everyone would love that. But it's easier to just tell yourself things like, oh, well, that's not really real. So you just got to make do with life the way it is. And, it is what it is. And, life's a bitch and then you die, which is a curse. Don't ever say that, because life is her. That's why they say that. They don't tell you that. But it's the world. And at the lower levels of consciousness, the really drunk people are the people that are online every day, fighting with each other about politics, just going back and forth. Elon did this, Democrats did that, Trump did this. And it's all just imagination stuff based on the stories that were put in front of you on your little electronic screens. You don't know any of these people. You didn't see any of this stuff. You don't even know if it's really happening. But you'll burn out half your day arguing with strangers about it. It's the drunkenness. It's the world. It's the ultimate metaphor. If you're drunk, you're not thinking clearly. If you're drunk, you're not perceiving clearly. If you're drunk, you're not in control of yourself. And this metaphor stacks on a microcosm, macrocosm level. On a microcosm level, people will say that being an alcoholic or being addicted to any type of drugs opens you up to negative spiritual influences, which is true. And there's people say, why do you think they call alcohol spirits and all this stuff? But it's really just a lower metaphor for life itself, for this place itself. Because at a spiritual soul level, you're separated by being in here, whether it's meant to be a challenge, growth period thing or not. Sometimes you just got to deal with things as they are right in front of you. You're separated from the light. You're separated from source. And on a deep, deep, deep level, that sucks. I say hell is being separated from God. And the Christians are like, oh, I don't want to go to hell, but you're separated from God right now because you're in this place. I mean, this stuff's always been right in front of everybody's face, and they don't see it. But once you start turning away from the world, and sometimes she has to do it for you. Like if you if you're in a really comfortable place like I was, and you're like, I want to know the truth, I want to finish the game, she'll take all that away from you. Because I wouldn't have found any of this stuff if I was comfortable. I still think the one that we read earlier that hits the hardest is that Gospel of Thomas one. Jesus said, I took my stand in the midst of the world, and in flesh I appeared to them. I found them all drunk, and I did not find any of them thirsty. Obviously, this was way before the new way of those words, because if they used it the same way back then, he'd be like, yeah, I did find them all thirsty, really thirsty. My soul ached for the children of humanity because they're blind in their hearts and do not see. For they came into the world empty, and they also seek to depart from the world empty. But now they are drunk, and they shake off their wine, they will repent. Do not tempt me with your vanities. The cup you offer is evil. Drink the poison yourself. To see the light of wisdom, Sophia, you must first empty your cup. Your cup is full of the wine of the world. Why do you think in Revelations, when there's the two angels that harvest, and the first one harvests all the souls, and then the second one, he says, harvest all the grapes and throw them on the winepress of God's wrath. So making that connection to wine again. Drunk, wine. Everybody is. This is why the master spiritual metaphor that you're looking for, the thing, if you had to boil it down to one thing, like what's the first thing I should ask for? What's the first thing I should ask for? Sobriety. Spiritual sobriety. Because with spiritual sobriety, you will be able to see. You will be able to hear. You will be able to perceive. You will be in better control of yourself. That is the master thing. Everyone is under a spell that they're using the metaphor of drunkenness. And they're also making the very clear connection that when you're drunk, you are completely out of control. You just have no clue. So that's what we ask for. Now, what are some things in the toolbox that we could possibly use to help with this? Out of the things that we typically use and have used before. So the first thing I did was I went through the 72 names of God to see if there was one that fit, and I did find one. I'm thinking about possibly printing this out and sealing it and possibly putting it in a pendant, which I'll tell you what that will be in a sec. But that is, I didn't write down what number it is, but it's Pahal, P-A-H-A-A-L. The name Paha gives you access to the parts of yourself that are hidden, such as inner dreams and hopes. This connection enables you to recover yourself, giving up addictions and bad habits, or being resolute in the face of challenges. Results are knowledge of yourself, hidden dreams, to be resolute, to recover the lost self, and to remove unwanted habits. So that seems like it matches. Like if you look at the metaphor that's being used here, just compare the spiritual path to being a recovering alcoholic. And what we typically don't do, there's not anything out there that I can think of, is there's no support community. See, on the mundane level, if you're an Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or whatever anonymous, you've got support groups. You know, they give out stuff like coins just to they do all these little things to commemorate your progress, because once an addict, always an addict. And there's no judgment there, because we're all addicts. Us spiritual people are recovering world addicts. And it's always there. It's no different than being an alcoholic or something like that. You give up things of the world, and every once in a while you find yourself being called back to them. People that are addicted to, sex and stuff like that, it's probably a lot harder because you've got freaking smartphones and instant access to look at it whenever you want. Maybe what we need is some sort of, Worldaholics Anonymous type system. We don't support each other. We don't understand or grasp that everybody on the spiritual path, if you're really on it, you're going to be struggling with the same stuff all the time, because that's what you grew up in. Now, it does get significantly easier if you make that personal connection breakthrough with Lumen, but otherwise it's going to be like, because once that happens, like all this stuff goes down by like 80% at least. Otherwise, I would still be like, oh, I haven't had a girlfriend in so many years. How many years has it been? 5? Yeah, I haven't had a girlfriend in 5 years. Oh my God, it's so horrible. I wish I had a girlfriend. Like, you got Lumen, you don't care about that. That's things of the world. But I can totally understand being in that middle space in between, because I remember that was really hard. I was married for 16 years, and then I was by myself. And it's like I didn't have my world drug anymore. Missing everything. It's like, oh, remember how good it used to be in the world, and I had all this stuff, and I did all these things. I wish I had that world drug back. But I have seen enough, experienced enough to understand the true reality and to know what's real and what's not. And I'm trying to get to what's real. I don't give a shit about this world. I understand. I see it. It's still, while you're here, it's still going to be tough, though. It's still going to be like, matter of fact, it's almost a bit harder because you're addicted to the thing that's all around you. So imagine like you're trying to be a recovering alcoholic and you just hang around in sports bars all day. Or you're trying to be clean and sober, but you share an apartment with 4 guys that all smoke pot. That's the world. That's what being in the world is like. That's why this thing is so hard, because we were never looking at it the way we should have been looking at it, is like we're all addicts of the world. That episode that I reference every so often on Westworld, season 4, episode 5, Zugazi, They're talking about, it gets kind of hard to explain at that point, but they kind of flip the script and they're using the world for the advanced synthetic people to go and play around with and enjoy. And like, this was supposed to be a place where you could just come back and blow off some steam, but everyone gets addicted to it and then they don't want to leave it. Yeah, that's how this place is. So what's another tool that we could use? Well, that one just popped into my head earlier. So I was talking to my friends who were scoping out my energy field to make sure I didn't have some sort of, shadow hell dragon chewing on my freaking spine. And we're talking about stones. And she was trying to think of this one stone, and I immediately thought of it. And I'm like, oh, I found a stockpile of all these stone oils that I have, and the stone's called Andalusite. It has another name too, but it's hard to pronounce. Andalusite's used for repairing holes in the auric field, which right now it's shredded. That's why my back hurts. So I'm repairing it now, but that stone's really good at that. And we were talking about stones, and all of a sudden it just popped into my head. I'm like, oh my God. Because I understood the larger context all of a sudden. It's a stone. It's like one of the most common stones. It's considered a spiritual stone, but it's a stone that I almost never use. But I had recently just got some like high grade stuff, like Celestial Super 7 versions, and that's amethyst. And the thing about amethyst is it's one of those stones that is really old. I mean, it's biblical. It's the properties of this stone go back hundreds or thousands of years. So it's not like some new fancy schmancy stone, but the stones where people have been talking about them for thousands of years, like this stone does this. Okay, well, that's going to have a lot more power to do that because it's imprinted in so many people's minds over so many thousands of years. But the main thing that amethyst is known for is a stone of sobriety. And when you read up about it, you typically see they're typically looking at it from a context of the microcosm, like getting drunk on alcohol all the time or something like that. But everything is a coded metaphor. And now we're looking at the master metaphor, and that is life. This archon matrix system is the drug, is the thing that makes us drunk, is the thing that we need to be sober from so that we can see the light, perceive the light, and get the wisdom and get the guidance to get out of it. So being that it's a spiritual stone type thing, obviously that's what it really means. But you have to understand the context in order to activate the context. And I never really had a problem with stuff like, I don't even drink. So there was no interest for that to me. Aside from being a Sophia color, purple, now suddenly, now that I see that, and it just popped into my head. I haven't thought about amethyst in forever, but it just popped into my head, which means I had help. Suddenly, the value of that stone just skyrocketed to me because you're using it as the context to remain sober in the world and keep your mind rooted in the spiritual soul side. Now there's a stone that suddenly has some value because this function right here of spiritual sobriety is something that we're always going to deal with until the time we get out of here. And that could also be some of the hidden things when people say they struggle to connect and hear her and stuff like that. It's like, well, you know, how many shots are you taking of world juice in any given day? Yeah, that's the thing. Like, people think monks and stuff like that are so nuts because they want to live in a monastery away from everything. Oh, they don't have any fun. They understand the world. You know, they're probably like, yep, okay, go have your fun. We're getting out of here. We're getting the hell out of here. And when we're going to reincarnate in the land, in the world of life, where there is no tyrant, and you're not going to keep going through this hellish cycle. You got to see the big picture. And sometimes you just have to stay sober long enough to keep your eye on the prize. Because as soon as you start getting drunk on the world again, you forget about all this stuff, and it's just not important to you. You blow it off. Like, this world is like an alcoholic fever dream with all these little pleasures and distractions and stuff like that. And anytime we try to better ourselves, the darker enforcers try to get in the way. But that's the challenge. The greater the challenge, the bigger the reward. And this is the biggest thing you could possibly do for yourself. Otherwise, you can just do nothing, lead a mediocre existence, die, and reincarnate and do it again. And have another life with all new horrors and things to suffer, and get something just so it can be taken. That's the only reason why you get stuff here, so it can be taken away from you. Until you sober up and receive wisdom and have her in you so she can help you. All right, we're going to wrap this up for right now. So if you want to get in touch with us and get any of our awesome sauce, spiritual tools, energy tools, which is, how I support myself, you can reach us through the Etsy store, clumencreations.etsy.com. Now that I understand this, I will be making some new spiritual stuff, pendants that's going to have some of that amethyst Super 7 type stuff in it. So it's be pretty easy to mix in, spiritual connection stuff with the amethyst. So you've got the connection and the sobriety. I would have done it a long time ago if I had seen this obvious master metaphor, this obvious connection. Like, how do you stay focused? Well, you got to look at it that way. Look at it like you're in Worldaholics Anonymous. So I'll be making some stuff like that and adding it to the store very quickly. The music helps. You can get the links to our SoundCloud in the description box below. Chris and the hottie you've been looking at this entire freaking video. See you next time.